Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I'm so excited I get to share that MFT has re-released their Quilt Square die. This was retired I think a couple years ago, and it's a die I used all the time in my videos until they retired it. I know a lot of people really want this, so I'm letting you know now it is available. I do have a link provided in the description box where you can purchase that. I thought I would show a couple of ways that I love using this die. So one way, I'm going to have 3 different pattern papers, and I make sure that one of them isn't super busy. And if you select a pattern that is direction specific, like that chevron paper, you'll need to pay attention when you're assembling your quilt. So here are all the different pieces from those 3 papers. I did run them individually, so 3 times through the machine. This die will cut out 4 different shapes, and what's really nice is you don't have to keep track of if one piece was in the upper right hand corner, because all of the same size pieces are interchangeable. That is not the case with all cover-up dies. So when you do run this through your machine, you will end up with the pattern paper frame. Now you could use this, you could add more papers inside. I generally don't. I think it's a little too busy. So I cut out some solid cardstock for those frames. If you're wondering, what do I do with all those little pieces, the red cardstock, that gray cardstock, I don't save it. I recycle it because I'm just going to use the frame. If I saved all of those little quilt pieces with the solid cardstock, I think I would be drowning in scraps. So I'm perfectly fine just using the frame piece and discarding the rest. I find the easiest way to adhere all of these pieces is putting some double-sided tape, this is some Scor-Tape, on the back side of the frame. That way you don't have to deal with liquid adhesive making a mess. I'm using 1-inch Scor-Tape first. And if I had these really close to each other, I could put that 4th piece, but I leave a little gap between each of the pieces. So now I'm just going to use, I think this is 3/4 of an inch Scor-Tape. It's not even Scor-Tape brand, it's an off brand, but they all work just fine. So now I'll flip this over and I have all that sticky tape, and I'll just start adhering the pieces in place. When I use the 3 different pattern papers, I'll have the inside part, the star, all with 1 pattern paper. The small triangles around the corners, I'll use another pattern paper. And then the larger triangles that are tucked in around the star, I'll use that final pattern paper. So I like to adhere the large pieces first, and then I'll select which one I want to use for these larger triangles. This time I'm going to go with the gray polka dot paper. And that means I'll be using the chevron paper for those small triangles in the outside corners. So I did speed this portion up quite a bit. I don't adhere all these pieces that quickly. Now for the chevron paper, I want to make sure it's all going the same direction. If you don't mind, you don't need to do this. You could just pop them all in place. But I like to lay them out first so that I have them going the correct direction. So just putting all of these in the final outside squares. So there is the first square all assembled. I assembled the other 2 off screen. So here are the 3 quilt squares using 3 pattern papers. And you can see even with those same 3 pattern papers, they have a very different look. Now another fun way to use the quilt die is to use some of those small pattern paper scraps. So this is when I am at the end of a 6x6 paper pad. The quilt die is a great cover-up die to finish off all those small scraps. I'm going to go ahead and cut out an assortment of different papers. Now if there are some designs that do need to be a specific direction and that bothers you, make sure to cut them out correctly so they'll be the correct direction when you adhere them together. But if you don't mind, then it really doesn't matter. Now, doing it this way does take a lot longer since I'm usually only able to cut out a couple of these pieces at a time. And I like to lay them out so I know what piece I still need. If I need more of the corner pieces or some of the star pieces. So I had that Scor-Tape on the back, and now I'm just placing them all into the die cut. But isn't that a fun look? It has a very traditional quilt look to it. So I have 4 different quilt squares. So now what do we do with it? How do we finish off a card? This is a very simple card. You could do all kinds of things with the quilt squares, but one of the reasons I like to use the Quilt Square die is I can keep my card nice and flat and not have to pay anything extra for postage, but the card still has a lot of detail. I have some pink cardstock for the background, layering it with that same dark gray cardstock. Using a sentiment stamp from Pretty Pink Posh, I stamped out "Sending Lots of Love." Then I'll remove the backing on the Scor-Tape and attach the quilt square to the top portion of the card. Put some ATG on the back and attach the card front onto a card base. Very simple and clean design. For embellishments, I'm going to use some of the mini star peel-offs from Love from Lizi. This is the red glitter. These add a really lovely sparkle without any extra dimension. So there are my 4 finished cards using MFT's Quilt Square cover-up die. I have provided a link in the description box where you can purchase this die. And it sounds like they've improved it slightly. The one that I have, sometimes the pieces get stuck in the die, so I would add a piece of wax paper first. So the new die is supposed to be easier to pop those pieces out. I may just have to pick up one of the new ones. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.